morning, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be here and be part of the Delphi conference, a very interesting and very powerful conference yearly event. Let me start first by welcoming our panelists. I'm very lucky, to be honest, because I'm moderating a session where I have three very distinguished panelists, excellencies, two very powerful females, who are the first in everything they have done, and a male who's actually an ex-prime minister. So it's certainly a pleasure to be here and an honor. One more thing that makes me happy is that they're all members of Club de Madrid, okay? And I know about Club de Madrid, but I read a little bit more, okay, when I became responsible for this session. And I found that it's a great institution. It's the world's largest forum of democratic former presidents and prime ministers who leverage their individual and collective leadership experience and global reach to strengthen inclusive democratic practice and improve the well-being of people around the world. These are very, very noble causes, so my pleasure is doubled. The topic itself is extremely important. It's a topic that's as old as the pharaohs, since I'm coming from Egypt. We've always been talking about development finance, but it's not clear what we are doing with it. But we're always talking about it. We're always talking about it. And the topic gains even more importance because the UN Conference on Development Finance, the fourth one, is going to take place in June 2025. So the discussion is very timely. And it's very timely also that the discussion be honest and direct and all in the right direction. You already know the speakers, but I'm going to go over their main affiliations again. We have His Excellency Mr. Stefan Lofven, Prime Minister of Sweden from 2014 to 2021. And we have Her Excellency Ms. Dalia Grybauskaitė, President of Lithuania, forgive me, 2009 to 2019. I'm going to say it only once at the beginning. After that, it's going to be a lot simpler, Dalia. And I have Her Excellency María Fernanda Espinosa. She is was the President of the UN General Assembly, 2018-2019, and the Minister of Defense and Foreign Affairs of Ecuador, 2017-2018. So it's really a pleasure. Without any delay, let me start right away with the questions. When we talk development finance, there are many aspects, there are many angles to tackle. I'm planning to talk about or to have the discussion around three themes. One of them is the international financial architecture and the changes that need to take place. The second is about the debt problem, okay? And the third is about climate finance, which is actually becoming en vogue, a very fashionable term that's not going anywhere. The entire world is working on a treadmill as far as this is concerned specifically. So if we start first with the international financial architecture, I think everybody agrees, everybody admits that the system as it stands is not delivering, okay? And evidence on the ground is showing it very clearly, especially when we talk about poorer countries, unfortunate continents like Africa, where Egypt is part of. And everybody agrees that there is a need for reform, okay? The question is, what kind of reforms are needed to improve the international financial architecture in order to make it more resilient and more nature positive and benefiting to the developing countries? And I'm going to start with María, okay? María, let's hear your views here. Technically, what are the reforms needed?
Well, first of all, thank you, Abla, and thank you. Greetings to the co-panelists. I'm very privileged to be sitting here in the company of such, incredible leaders. And just to respond to your question, Abla, what are we talking about? We are talking about the need for $4.2 billion per year to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. Out of these 4.2 billion, 3.9 billion are needed in the developing countries. And these are not minor issues. Basically, we want a world free of extreme poverty, that tackles inequalities, that takes care of our planet, which is the scaffold of the future of our life as a human species. We need to mobilize more resources and do it and make the resources reach the places and spaces where they are needed. And we're not talking small money. We are talking, I said billion, but it's trillion. No? Mm-hmm. Sorry, there is a little difference between 4.2 trillion and billion. So apologies, it is about trillions, mobilizing trillions to meet the basic needs of people. We're talking water and sanitation, access to health, the very fundamentals, the essentials for humans to live with dignity. Where is this money going to come from? And that's the big question. There is no shortage of resources in the world of today. It's not that we do not have enough money. We have plenty of resources. The issue is to combat poverty and inequalities and to give people a life with dignity, free from fear and free from want. It's a political choice. In how we make these choices. Basically, I would mention three issues. First of all, the reform of the international financial architecture cannot be addressed in a piecemeal approach. Let's first fix the modus operandi of the multilateral banks. Let's then tackle the debt challenge. And after that, let's look at the liquidity crisis that countries face. It's not only a liquidity crisis, it's a profound structural crisis of the lack of fiscal space and the lack of policy space thereof that to take the decisions that they need to take. So to do re-engineer the tax system internationally, to rethink the governance structures and the decision-making mechanisms in multilateral banks, to establish debt relief mechanisms for developing countries. I think we're going to talk specifically about that, and to use the multilateral spaces like the G7 and the G20 and the BRICS to address these issues that then need to come to the big house, and the big house is the United Nations, is of utmost importance. And so it is an issue of governance, that's the number one, of no piecemeal approach, but everything at the same time, which is easy to say, difficult to do. The second issue is about meeting the commitments that we have made internationally. And the best example is the 0.7 of GDP on development assistance, ODA. I think two countries meet the 0.7 target. I was in a meeting last week in Madrid, and someone said, a high-level authority, that ODA has practically disappeared. This cannot be because, and I was saying, ODA should change names. It should not be development assistance. It should be ODC, development cooperation. I think that to give rights and dignity to people should be a shared responsibility. Under a principle that it's true, it's under the Convention on Climate Change, but common but differentiated responsibilities. This has to go beyond the idea of aid. It has to really connect with co-responsibility worldwide. It is the only way that we're going to stop risky migration. It's the only way that we're going to stop conflict and massive human displacement because of climate, because of conflict. And I think that the so-called countries of the Global South, I prefer to call them the global majority countries because we are the global majorities, should have a say at the table where decisions are taken, including in the spaces in the multilateral banks, both the World Bank, the IMF, but also regional banks. And the third issue I would like to tackle here, Abla, very quickly, is the need for domestic resource mobilization. We really need to take seriously the issue of how we prioritize investment. And when I say this, I come from a small country, Ecuador. When I say this, is what is the best investment? The best investment in times of artificial intelligence is human intelligence. It again, invest on the basics. And the basics are health, education, shelter, security. And for that to happen, we need fair tax systems, proper taxation. We need to combat illicit financial flows and tax evasion. But we also need a greater power share between men and women. I really like the way this panel is because we have one man, very important one, but just one. But the world doesn't look like that. When there is power and decision-making, women are underrepresented. If you look at how many women are at the top of multilateral banks and international banks and central banks, we are underrepresented. So we need more women taking decisions, and I'm looking here at His Excellency Amr Musa. I don't know what your look is approval or disapproval, but I think that this is also important when we're thinking about transforming the international financial architecture. Again, governance and decision-making, more resources and in better conditions for developing countries, number three, a greater voice for countries of the global majority. So these would be my 3 points, Abla, and very much looking forward to hearing, the co-panelists.
Thank you, Maria, so much. Thank you so much. You explained in very eloquently and in details what needs to be done. Definitely a holistic approach instead of the piecemeal that we are watching, the responsibility and not just aid, and of course the responsibility of the domestic resource mobilization, who I always like to put it in the second place because there's a bigger responsibility that's not being handled. So let's not always keep it on the national side.
It's all at the same time. That's my approach.
All at the same time.
The global and the national and the local.
Absolutely. Okay. So this is what's needed. Okay. All right. The big question, the very big question in one word, in 3 letters, is how. The how part. Especially that everyone seems to be going after the international financial architecture, changing itself from within, which is really very interesting. This is like being in a classroom and you're asking the people who are sitting in the first row to willingly go stand up, reduce their power, and go in the back for the others to benefit. They will never do it on their own. So the big question is the how. So this question is actually being addressed to the 2 politicians who are on the ground and are to fight it. And I will start with Dalia because women first, and then you are going to suffer at the end and collect this whole thing together.
Not everywhere is good for women to be first, but okay, so whatever we had from previous speaker, it is wishful thinking. What was relevant a month ago, year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, but not anymore. And wishful thinking because ideology of an attitude towards developing or cooperation between countries changed radically. That means we cannot count anymore on the situation we had even a month before and think that somebody is obliged to help somebody else. The philosophy is radically changed. There is no common West anymore. The West is fragmented. The geopolitical countries are not willing to help and to invest into development wealth. That's the case. And more we realize that we need to count only on ourselves. That means on the regions, and regional cooperation is starting to become more relevant at this time, at least for some time, at least. I mean, European Union on its own, African Union on its own, Asian some institutions on its own. Regional banks need to be receiving more functions and financial resources to manage themselves. I don't count at all on IMF or World Bank, because especially the World Bank is absolutely influenced by US, and I'm sure that a lot of programs will be cut by the today's administration, because the World Bank especially is dominated and position is in the hands of US administration. So from this point of view, let's not be naive. The reality changed, and nobody cares anymore about the problems of other regions. That's a reality which we need to smell as a coffee in the morning. And wishful thinking is gone also. Yes, it is very bad, but we in the shake of mental shake, how the world will cooperate and will develop. And that's a problem that geopolitical countries who were taking care before on development assistance and were dominating development assistance, as the US, for example, even Europe, now are withdrawing from their obligations and responsibilities, especially US, partly also European Union, because the prioritization of the spending in the regions, especially in US and Europe, is starting to be defense spending, debt problems, which already are not only in development world, but a lot increase in developed societies, as US, for example. Today we see the debt even worse in US than even trade problems we today have, or taxation and tariff problems. The debt is the first priority for US, cutting everything else. The same is practically in Europe. If the shake of trade will be such disastrous as it's coming, the debt problem in Europe also increasing, and pressure on spending for defense is also increasing. So, in reality, we're going opposite direction from the goals we agreed as SDGs a few years ago. We're going backwards, very much backwards. So more and more regions needs to count on themselves. More and more cooperation needs to be taken care, understanding very clearly that nobody will take care about you. Nobody will take care about Europe. Nobody will take care about African Union. Nobody will take care about anybody else. That's the responsibility, and the regions need to understand it. It is shocking, but it is a chance and possibility to be more financially self-sufficient. Yes, it is painful. It will be not easy, but there is no choice. Neither for us Europeans there is a choice, neither for Africans there is a choice, and there is no choice for anybody else. United Nations will be able to provide as much as they will be allowed to by member states. Member states, main financial member states, are not willing to provide additional resources and power for United Nations. So, as I said, taking from reality, not from wishful thinking what is supposed to be done or needed to be done, but because this rhetoric was relevant a few months ago. Mm-hmm. But now it is our own responsibility. We need to look for new cooperation schematics, new financial resources. Yes, there is a lot of financial resources in the world, but to accumulate them, there is new channels need to be done. Plus, China. China is starting, because of, with the help, ironically I'm saying, with the help of US, starting to become even more relevant, even more strong. And they will be the cash machine in near future. Opposite what US wanted to be. Because of their behavior and trade war, they started against all the world. China will become fast, stronger, and financially capable to provide development assistance. Good it or bad it, but the soft power will be in China's hands. And US is giving it up to them. Mm-hmm. So again, this will change the picture of the development assistance and financial assistance to the world, to the rest of the world. Is it good or bad? That's another matter. And of course, if one or another country is dominant, it's nothing good. It's better to be balanced. But that's a reality which we are falling, all of us, and we are pushed from the cliff in reality, all of us, from the cliff to the new reality. And here we need to find a place for already existing institutions, but I'm sure that regional institutions need to be strengthened. We don't need to create something new. We do have a lot of them, but we need to make them more relevant, more efficient, and to give them more power, plus financial resources, but regionally. I don't count anymore on horizontal institutions in nearest medium term. I think we need to realize that and emphasize and be engaged more on the regional attitude and institutions and cooperation. Europe will stay quite efficient and effective, especially coming from the north, myself and my colleague also. Europe always will be engaged in development assistance, but not in the same phase again as it was before, because of the pressures of taking security in its own hand, plus, of course, the trade war. I'm sure that there will be not possible to solve all questions with the US, even for Europeans, on trade, because US applying tariffs not as a trade tool, really, as a political pressure tool for all relations. It's not only trade, it's also security, it's also non-tariff relations, it's also crime relations, narcotics, everything is in the package. So if you, using the trade economic tool for non-economic relations, it's a disaster. The outcome will be disastrous for everybody, the country who is applying and the countries who are receiving such kind of attitude. So from this point of view, the reality is more difficult, more unstable on development cooperation, let's say, if we call it that way. Perspective, we understand how much it is necessary, but political understanding of responsibility as obligation to help somebody else is gone. Is almost gone, except maybe in some European countries. It's gone. And in this environment, we need to look how to make self-sufficiently in all regions, not only Europe, but Africa, Asia, of course, Latin America. There's new reality, and we need to face this new reality and forget a little bit
Thank you very much.
What was nice before.
Thank you very much for this reality check. Let me add something to the complexity of the question before reaching you, because you are the male on the panel, of course. That's the first reason. And the second reason, because the reality check is also harsh. And it's always good to compare where we need to be and where we actually are. If things are that bad, and we need to be regionally stronger, and there needs to be balance, and we're all aware of this, okay? Should the existing system continue, really? I mean, the financial architecture system is being looked at as if it can be handled on its own. Shouldn't it be bigger than that? Like having a new economic order, having a new Bretton Woods. The balance of power in the world is completely different. The global south is much bigger in terms of population, wealth, power, okay? And what the US is doing is actually literally shooting itself in the foot domestically, economically, and politically, destroying themselves internally, okay? But shouldn't this be the case, and shouldn't Europe support it? Because Europe is aware of its weakness at this stage. Shouldn't they lead this balanced approach?
Yes, I think so. First, thank you for the question, and thanks for the brave audience that I hear. Yes, it needs to be regarded in a broader perspective, the financial architecture, in a political perspective. And let me just start with a few, as I regard as very important political statements. The first is what was mentioned earlier, that the world's financial resources is not our problem. We have enough. Just count and see. I think I saw a figure, the financial resources worldwide equals to some 130,000 billion US dollars. Okay? So that's number one. So that we don't get scared, we can't do this, it's too much. Yes, we can. We can invest in security, we can invest in development cooperation, we can invest in climate transition. That's the first. The second is we need to regard this, not least the development cooperation, as a win-win. It's not just throwing away money from richer countries to poorer countries. That's not the case. It's not a zero-sum game, because I think today we have a problem that too many people regard this as a zero-sum game, not least the President of the United States. He thinks this is a zero-sum game. It is not. One example I like to refer to, although I do not like the Chinese political system, but it is a fact that when several 100 million people in China were lifted out of poverty into some kind of middle class, that was good for them. It was good for China. But because the world economies are so interlinked, it's good for the world economy, because they're also starting to take part in consumption, and so it's a win-win. We have to see that. This is not throwing away money, this is an investment. The third political statement I think is important is that we have to also look at the alternative cost. If we do not invest enough in climate transition, if we do not invest enough in making better lives for poorer people, there is an alternative cost. For Europe was mentioned the migration issue, that is true, but also for the climate transition. If we allow heating go up to 3-4 degrees, what's going to happen then? But I don't hear that discussion at all. I hear people are worried about gasoline price, diesel price, and all that, and I understand it. I grew up on the countryside, northern Sweden, so I understand the problem. But we have to deal with it. Instead, we're subsidizing fossil fuels by trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars. So we're subsidizing the thing that is causing this heating, global warming, and instead of make use of these money to make this transition. The fourth I want to lay as a foundation is that what we do now, we need to work in such a way that we strengthen our world community. We need to strengthen the United Nations so that we do not work country by country, region by region. We have to do that as well. But we have to come together and see that all these challenges that we're meeting need to be addressed somehow together in the world community. So of course we need change. We do need change. But on the financial issues specifically, there is an ongoing discussion. People know that we have to deal with the debt crisis. We have to deal with how to better manage financial crisis, taxing, and all those issues are on the table. What we now need to do is to make sure that they are developed and implemented, so that we don't find totally new ways. I think there's a broader, to answer your question, I think there is a broader understanding. Not like shift like this, but I think more of leaders also in the so-called developed world or North or whatever we call ourselves understand that we have to deal with it, because this is about trust. We have to show we are ready to make a change. It needs to be major. The richer part of the world need to address the poorer part of the world, saying we understand that we did so many things wrong, so many things. We understand that we have to invest a lot, and I'm talking about investment, not throwing away money. We need to invest a lot. This promise that was made 2009, I think, in this global conference, 100 billion. The West, the developed world said to the developing world, we're going to invest 100 billion. It hasn't been met yet. It has not been met yet. It's a shame, to be honest. And so I just read this report from UN University. I think it's very good because it summarizes, in a way, all these different things about debt, dealing with debt crisis and all these things, in a way. So the title is The Demand for a Fair International Financial Architecture. And it structures all these different things that need to be done in 5 or 6 different areas. One is space, meaning that the developing world need to have a better place at the table, more of a saying. That was also what we proposed when I co-chaired the high-level advisor board on effective multilateralism with the former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. That was one of the things we said. You need more democracy in the World Bank, in the IMF, because how can we constantly elect an American head of the World Bank, a European head of the IMF, and then we ask ourselves, why don't the Global South trust us? Why can't we build it? Well, it's obvious. If we think we are the only ones that can be the leader of these organizations. So space, democracy. The other thing is speed. How do we make this move faster? Not least in a financial crisis. The third thing is scale, that we have to scale up and dramatically, and we can do that using the World Bank, the regional development banks, the IMF, if we can de-risk, because we have to pull in private capital as well, because there's a lot of private capital, so we have to do that. It has to be sustainable, so that when we invest, we do this in a sustainable way. Debt release, I think, is very important, but you can combine that with saying, you will get debt release also if we can find a way to work together to decrease emissions. If we can do that, yes. Solidarity goes without saying. So a political will is absolutely necessary, and I agree with Dalia. I will end there. We have a totally different situation right now with the American president, yes. So I think we need to be realistic, count US out for a time. Everything that goes in the other direction is a bonus, okay, welcome that. But we have to think as if US isn't there. As Europeans, we have to do it, and in many different ways. But we do have our allies. Canada, we need to build bridges with Latin America, with the whole African continent. The African continent is the continent that will grow this century in terms of population, in terms of workforce. So we have to have the, and also with Asia. South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, so there are like-minded. Let's gather all the good forces and keep on walking and see if US will join us in a few years.
Thank you very much. And again, the core is the political will. The question is, can you really change everything and go for it with the US in the system as it stands? Okay, we tackled the other issues, and I want to give a chance for the audience to make some comments. But I want very briefly for all of you to revisit, and you touched it already, on the climate finance part, because the climate finance is receding in the back in terms of priority, okay? First during COVID by, just simply ignoring it altogether and paying attention and subsidizing the fuels and the wars, okay? And it's receding even more now with the geopolitical conflicts, to the extent that I think that everything what's happening in the world is there to confuse the world and blur things until the Palestinians are completely eradicated, okay? So let's go to the climate finance and the unfairness that was faced by Africa. How can this be scaled up when they did not even pay the 100 billion, when what is needed is in the trillions, when a continent like Africa suffered like hell during COVID with vaccination, even though everybody knows that they're all affected still. African continent received nothing. What can be done in this area to bring it back to focus? And it is really sarcastic that it's going to kill everybody, and yet we think it's going to kill the Africans only, but when it's going to kill everybody else. So let's have just a couple of quick minutes from each one on the climate, please, so that we give a few minutes for the audience to ask questions. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Abla. And I'm going to disobey just a little bit, because I cannot just stop myself of reacting to what my co-panelists have mentioned here.
I expected this, by the way.
Yes, very, very, very quickly. Number one, the multiple crises that we face are impossible to address and solve on the go-it-alone mode, regardless of how the GDP, the square kilometers of your country. We are increasingly interdependent and interconnected. So the multilateral responses are extremely important. And we should not forget, regional responses are multilateral. So I agree with you that strengthening multilateral cooperation spaces is vital. Latin America and Africa and Asia. And on the financial side, it's extremely important. We have the G77 plus China configuration with 134 countries coming together to put forward their agendas. It's not a minor issue. I strongly believe in the power of small and medium-sized countries. And it's not that it's wishful thinking. It's happening now. And if you look at the leadership of Brazil and now of South Africa as they lead the G20 processes, we see, for example, South Africa has decided that debt is central. Why is debt central? Because since 2008, sovereign debt in developing countries has increased in 240 times. This is really, really killing the economies of countries in the global south. We are facing a debt crisis. How to solve the debt crisis? There is a menu of options. Was not your question, so I will skip the menu of options, but I also believe that the report of the UN University is very good. I have the privilege to co-chair an initiative called Debt Relief for Green Recovery. We have set at the table several of the options that include not only bilateral debt, but also multilateral debt and private debt. And there is a lot of movement happening on that front under the leadership of South Africa. We have great hopes not only of the G20 in South Africa, but also of the upcoming Financing for Development Conference in Seville. And here again, we need collective action. We need the shared political will to do something that, as Stefan was saying, is not a zero-sum game. It's not aid. It is co-responsibility, and the cost of inaction is huge. And when I say that the cost of inaction is huge, I will turn into your question very, very quickly. Climate finance. I think that what is happening in the climate space and the money that is required, 1.3, 1.5 trillion per year to achieve the Paris Agreement goals, including the 1.5 degrees. By the way, this year we already passed the 1.5 degrees threshold. We are in deep trouble, seriously in deep trouble. And I'm with you, Abla, when you said the paradox here is that humans are not exercising their instinct of self-preservation. People are dying with extreme heat, with drought, with floods. We are dying, literally. And the thing is, it's not only happening in countries of the global south. It's not only that small island developing states are mostly going to disappear from the face of Earth. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in Europe with extreme heat, for example. People are dying. It's happening everywhere in my region of Latin America, in the Caribbean islands. So it is a shared responsibility. The financing gaps in the climate space are huge. There are many reasons for that. Number one, we said 100 billion per year. I was in the Cancun meeting when the deal was sealed and in Copenhagen. That was 10 years ago. And the 100 billion were met last year, 10 years later. So we are so late.
When the need has increased a zillion times.
Of course, well, first of all, we have met 29 times to discuss, debate, and negotiate under the Conference of the Parties. The more we meet, the more the emissions increase. So I think that we need to rethink climate governance as a whole. How is that we take decisions? How is that we comply with the decisions we take and the enforcement mechanisms? There's several countries in the world already where climate non-compliance have been subject to legal liability. And I think that the enforcement mechanisms should be, creatively thought about. In terms of the financial gaps, 1.3, 1.5 trillion a year, and we do not know exactly how much money is going to climate finance. Why? Because there is double accounting, because the numbers are not clear, because everybody comes, oh yes, we are investing these billions in climate, but I think the accounting, the metrics on how we measure climate finance, and meeting the already existing responsibilities.
Thank you.
In Baku, and I'm going to end with that, in Baku we said, how much we need? 1.3 trillion per year. How much we committed? 300 billion. I want to see the 300 billion being delivered. I want to see the loss and damage fund being, financially operational, because it was made operational already in Baku. And I want to see carbon markets also benefit the countries of the global majority. Again, the cost of inaction and the lack of investment in climate, both in mitigation and adaptation and resilience building, is going to be one of the major flaws, not only of the multilateral system, but of humanity to exercise the basic instinct of self-preservation. And again, kudos to South Africa for the leadership, kudos to Brazil last year, and what I can say is that the global South and the global majority countries are not victims. They are where the innovation is taking place. I will end there.
No, I think this session needed 2 hours or 3 hours, because the topics are extremely important and you guys are extremely knowledgeable, but I really want to keep 2 minutes for the audience. Okay. So please, Dalia.
Okay, devil's advocate.
What?
Devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate. Yeah,
I will take this function.
I love devil advocates.
Yes,
I am
everything
one.
is perfect. That's our dream, what the world's supposed to have and want. But today's one of the largest nations dictate us not win-win a value, but the value of one wins, others lose, and that's perfect for them. Yeah, exactly. And we under pressure of it. So the reality is that we take the tools which still in our hands to tackle the world and not to dream about what's supposed to be happening. So why it will be only 100, even not 100 for climate change? Because most of countries are not willing to do this. United States just 2 days ago made a decree to revive their coal usage, instead of clean energy resources. So we see everything in reverse. The withdrawal from international obligations, the largest country, which is dictating how international multinational institutions will work. I'm sure that IMF and World Bank will be paralyzed, not increased in capacities and functions in the development, but paralyzed because of US administration attitude and values. So take it and try to find the ways how to survive this time in medium term and to use the tools available to us, not wait. We cannot wait and bargain or pray for better behavior with us. No, we need to take this as a challenge to create new tools, and for a moment, probably more based on regional cooperation, and go ahead, not wait. If somebody wants to go with self-destruction, very welcome. But don't allow...
For himself.
Yes, for themselves, but don't be dragged together and not go in this direction together. That's what I'm saying about smell reality and act and not wait and not complain. And forget the win-win philosophy. This not exist anymore. Yes, it is the best philosophy for developing the world, but it is not the case anymore. So take as it is and use this opportunity. It is opportunity for all of us, for Europe, for Africa, for everybody to become more self-reliant and stronger and to create new alliances, at least temporarily. New alliances in closer cooperation. That's our reality. And let's not complain.
Thank you, Dalia, so much. Stefan, you have the last word.
Yeah, gather all the good forces. There are good forces. Keep on. And on climate financing, again, this is a win-win situation. It's a huge challenge, but it's also a huge possibility. Because let me give you an example. One of the Swedish steel companies, SSAB, developed a method of manufacturing steel without using coal. That will dramatically decrease emissions if the whole steel industry in the world would do so. Showing a possibility, showing new technology, new jobs, the future jobs, that is the future welfare. So if combining decreasing emissions by building a better society, that should be the equation we're looking for, and try to explain more. And again, the alternative cost. If the warming becomes 3 or 4 degrees, okay, if we cannot produce food anymore, that's the cost. That's the very damaging cost. That we want to avoid. Let's go for this path where we both can decrease emissions and build a new and better society with new jobs and new welfare. That's the political task, in my view.
Thank you very much. And am I allowed 5 minutes for oh, no, I'm not allowed 5 minutes. Okay, okay, so just to wrap it up, I think they said everything that anyone in this room dreams of saying, whether we're talking Africa, Latin America, the rest of the world. We're in a very bad situation because there is no international accountability, and because the international accountability is coming from the very people who are changing the system. But there are possibilities, there are new technologies. We need a more united Europe, we need a stronger Africa, we need a stronger Latin America, and let's hope that the circus of the stars played by Trump ends soon and the rest of the world wakes up. Thank you so much. You've been a great panelist. Thank you so much.